I'm putting us live on Vimeo. Let's see. I'm just going to also go to the Small Tech website.
Just checking it's live, yeah?
Yeah, just check that it's live on there as well. So I'm just going to go there and see if we're live on there. There might be a slight delay or something.
And check that the dog is staying still. Oh, I can hear you.
And the dog is fine. Okay, cool.
The dog is fine.
It looks like we're live. So, hi everybody. My name is Aral Balkan.
And I'm Laura Kalbag, and together we are Small Technology Foundation. We're a tiny, teeny little not-for-profit based here in Ireland, and I am currently downstairs, and he is currently upstairs.
Yeah, and this is something that we're trying for the first time. A weekly live stream where we talk about small technology and about the small web, and we're calling it Small is Beautiful. So again, every week at the same time, sometimes with special guests. So today we're very lucky on our very first show to have a very special guest, the founder of elementaryOS, Daniel Fore. He's with us from the US. It's very early. I just woke up and got a cup of coffee. We will introduce him properly in a little bit. But first, Laura.
First of all, Aral, could you tell us a little bit more about what is small tech? What is small web? What are we even doing here?
Cool. Okay. So I prepared a tiny little introduction for those of you who might be thinking, well, okay, what are you guys talking about? Why small web? Why small tech? What's wrong with big tech? What's wrong with big web? And in a word, what's wrong is surveillance. Big tech and big web center around a culture and a business model of surveillance, of tracking you, of profiling you. In fact, it's the business model of companies like Facebook. So Facebook, for example, has two audiences. It has its users. These are you. You don't pay Facebook for anything. And it has its customers. And these are the organizations and the corporations that actually do pay them. But for what? Well, what Facebook does is Facebook tracks and watches everything that you do and creates profiles of you. And it's this valuable insight into your lives, these proxies of you that can be used to manipulate your behavior that they monetize with their customers, the organizations and corporations that actually pay them. So this is a system that I call people farming. It's a system that Shoshana Zuboff from Harvard Business School calls surveillance capitalism. And when Facebook says, look, hey, we connect you to one another, what they're actually doing is they're lying. This is a lie, because what they're really doing is they're connecting all of us to Facebook. So what would happen if we just took Facebook, for example, out of the question and we started connecting to one another directly without a Facebook in the middle? What kind of web would we get then? Well, we would get the web that we call small web. And that is what we're working on building at the Small Technology Foundation. And small technology is about an approach to technology that is the exact opposite of big technology. So that's what small technology is. Take big technology and invert it, and that is small technology. So it is not centralized, it's decentralized. It is not colonial in its approach to design and development. It is non-commercial. I mean, it can be commercial, but the core reason for doing it is not to make as much profit as you can and become a billion-dollar corporation. In fact, if you become a billion-dollar corporation, you've failed utterly in what you're doing. So we have a whole set of principles, 10 principles around it. So I hope that gives you an idea about what we're about and what we do.
Now it's about time to have our guest.
Yes, I think it would be great to introduce Daniel. So as I said, we're very lucky to have Daniel Fore. If Laura, you want to make your introduction.
Well, so this is Daniel Fore, and he is the founder of elementaryOS. And just to start us off, Daniel, what is elementaryOS?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, elementaryOS, in a nutshell, is an open source and privacy focused computer operating system. And so we bill it as a replacement for macOS on your Mac or Windows on your PC. And we're working with lots of different hardware partners to try to make it easy for you to get. And one we're particularly excited about right now is some of the new ARM space notebook things. Maybe we can edge in a little bit against Chromebook and fight some of that surveillance capitalism.
Got a
That is really cool.
$200 Pine book right here.
And how did you get into doing elementaryOS? Like, what got you started?
You know, it's funny. Originally, it was just kind of frustration with the way that Windows was. And I kind of got into some theming and modding communities for Windows XP, where people were, trying to fix a lot of the little design issues. And then I found out about Linux, and in particular, this distribution called Aurora. And at the time, they were doing a lot of experimentation with like 3D window effects, and it was all very interesting. And so I kind of got in there from the design side. And at that time, we weren't even really thinking about things like privacy yet. It was more just about like, how can we make the computers that we use more fun and interesting and engaging?
And that's part of it, though, isn't it? I mean, it's when you think about design, initially when we think about design, of course, it's the visual aspects, right, that strike you first. And you're like, oh, well, macOS looks good. And so if we just made Windows look like macOS, then problem solved. It's only when you actually do that that you realize, wait a minute, it's not, it's not just how it looks. It's not working as it should. It's not functioning as it should. And that design is not this kind of, simulacra, this superficial level, but it goes all the way. And you know this better than I do, because you're working on all of the levels with elementaryOS right now, right? That it goes through the whole stack, and every decision you make affects that experience that people are having.
Yeah, you pretty quickly discover that you can only get so far in shaping the experience by changing the surface level pixels on the screen. And you have to start changing the way things are laid out. And then you have to start changing the way the application communicates in all of its copy. And then you have to start thinking about like, well, what is the purpose of this component? What is it trying to help the person do in their life? And so you start developing philosophies about what's the point of this thing that we're interacting with? And the longer you get it, the deeper it gets.
Yeah, I think that is a really good metaphor that's a really good metaphor for how people are within organizations as well. Often you start off in your work and you're just working on a small superficial element of something inside your job. And then you think, well, I want to actually make a change to this product. And then you realize, oh, I have to get more involved. I have to do more things. And then you're like, but actually, to make any bigger, greater change, I actually have to start understanding the business model. And then I realized that I can't actually change the business model. And then I'm stuck realizing that I can't change this organization from the inside. I really need to be able to have an effect on it, really get my hands into the core of it.
That's a really great point about the business model. And that's something that we've noticed very early on. And I'm glad that we created a culture on from the beginning is your business model really shapes your incentives very heavily. And so we, did things from the very beginning, like decide that advertising probably isn't a good thing to have our business model be based on, and kind of looking at like, okay, what are ethical business models? What are business models that don't lock out people in other regions from being able to access the product? Or what are business models that benefit the greater community? And that's, I think, really important is to watch out where your incentives are leading you.
Because it's exactly those core incentives that determine the end product. I mean, there's a process that it goes through, but the end product, if your organization is competent, the end product is not going to go counter to those incentives. Because I find that people sometimes have a hard time understanding this. For example, they look at Google's products and they go, I love using Google's products, but I just wish they wouldn't spy on me. I just wish they wouldn't do this, or I just wish they'd fix these bugs, that mean that they end up getting all this information about us. And I'm just like, it's not a bug, it's a feature. This is how they make money. This is why they're a $1 trillion company.
Yeah.
And the product just reflects that. So,
Yeah,
it's really
absolutely.
great to have organizations like you where, you're not starting off from that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, but your goal here is not to be a billionaire, right? Because if it is,
Oh,
you're going
no.
about it wrong.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely agree with more and more people that are coming out and saying, if you're a billionaire, then that means that you're not using your resources for the greater good. You're hoarding, and it's selfish, right? Like
Exactly.
if you
Yeah.
have that much revenue coming in, you should have that much revenue going out.
Basically, and the thing is, if you wouldn't become a billionaire if your business model and the way that you've designed your organization wasn't designed for that. If you didn't take venture capital at the very beginning, if you didn't take that 5 million of venture capital and then enter into that contract that says, look, I've taken this 5 million, which means that in 5 years' time, I need to be a $1 billion unicorn, and you need to get your returns. The wealthy people who invest in that venture capital fund have to get their returns. Once you're in that road, that's it. You might have had the best of intentions, and maybe you just kind of went, okay, this is how people are doing it. This happens, because people graduate from Stanford, and then it's like, well, what do I do? Well, you got to get some venture capital. And the moment you get VC, it's over. I mean, you can only become that or fail quickly. It's okay if you fail quickly. We're all right with that as well. But success for that model is being a $1 billion unicorn. And that's like for us, for small technology, that's failure. That is the ultimate failure mode. If we ever become a $1 billion unicorn, we've designed it wrong. We've put ourselves at the center. We've made it so that as the thing scales, we scale alongside it. How do we build things that can scale in a different way, like horizontally, not vertically, that can scale without a single organization scaling alongside? That's what we're trying to explore with small tech. And I think we're aligned to some degree.
When it comes to elementary OS, like, what is your idea of success? You said about having being an alternative to something like a surveillance device like a Chromebook. Is that the kind of thing that you're aiming for in terms of success?
Yeah, I think right now, one of the major metrics that we measure success by is how many people are downloading elementary OS that are coming from proprietary operating systems. So, we get a lot of people in our niche that talk about competing with other open source operating systems. And that's not really something we're interested in. We're more interested in trying to bring an open source and privacy respecting operating system to people that are completely unfamiliar with this, that are coming from a world where their technology is locked down, where it is spying on them and advertising to them all the time. And even for products that claim to be privacy respecting, there's no transparency. You can't audit these closed source products. So, these claims, they can't be backed up in any way.
So this is where the sort of honesty point comes in. So Aral, as someone who has bought one of these new machines, I am possibly your ideal future customer, because I am someone who, despite what we talk about, I'm still using Mac OS. I'm still using a proprietary, incredibly locked down system, and all my devices are Apple.
Yeah, and it's really hard. They design the ecosystems very specifically to suck you in more and more and make it very hard to leave. And a lot of these systems are incredibly hard to start, right? Like the amount of engineering or capital you need to compete with some of the services that they've set up is astronomical. It's really,
and I mean,
the
how
game
big
is
is your
rigged.
It totally is, Daniel. Like, how big is your core team? Because I know you, I know of you, and we've met now, but virtually. And I know of Cassidy, and I know that you have a few other people. But how big is your core team?
So at the moment, we only have 3 people on regular payroll, and then we do some contracting. We were doing a bounty system for a while, but that hasn't really worked out so great. So we're kind of leaning more towards contracts right now. But we primarily have a volunteer-driven community of developers. So I would say that at any given time, it's probably somewhere between 15 and 30 engineers. And then, of course, we have a translation community that's just massive, which is amazing.
Right. Right. But I mean, compared to a company like Apple, that's not even a satellite office somewhere in a country that you've never heard their name of, right?
Right.
Where you're talking about a $2 trillion company that doesn't pay its taxes, and that's why it's a $2 trillion company.
Yeah.
And that was part of the thing for me, for example, that finally made me switch, because I was on a Mac for the longest time. Before that, I was on Windows for the longest time because I was 7 years old and my dad got me a DOS computer, like an IBM XT compatible. And I'm very stubborn sometimes. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. I remember 7-year-old me going, IBMs, that's going to be the future. Oh, you have your fancy Amigas and your Commodore 64s with their graphics. Oh, we're going to catch up one day. And so that kept me going for like 20 years or something. That's how stubborn I am. Before I was like, no, actually, this is shit. This platform is horrendous. What am I doing? It got to a point where I hated my life because I had to look at this horrible experience and every day. So that's what got me started. So I was on Apple after that. But then at some point, I just can't bring myself morally to give any more money to a proprietary lockdown system. They're not the same as Google. Their business model is not the same as Google. And even today, I tell people, look, if you just want something that just works and your options are, either Windows or this, well, go with Apple, because, they do actually have an incentive in their business model to protect your privacy. They're still a $2 trillion company that doesn't pay their taxes, though.
And we still can't be sure that they are actually doing what they say they're doing because of the lack of transparency as well.
Right. I mean, the only thing we can be sure of is they probably won't do anything that's against their business model or against their financial interests, but that opens it up, right? Mm-hmm. That means that, if there's an app for tracking your wife for Saudi men, that's allowed on the App Store because that's in Apple's financial interests or in their political interests because they're so big right now. If China wants VPNs taken off the App Store, that's in their political interests to say, okay, yes, China, do that. So there are a lot of elements. And I was just sick and tired of supporting that, and I say this, and yet my primary computer today, if I'm honest, is this. It's not the Linux system I've been using for the last 2 years or the new one that I just got that I'm going to use for development every day. This is not how I make my purchases. Like when I go to a store, I tap this, or I tap the watch that's attached to this. I use a Linux PC, a laptop for my development. I've been doing so for 2.5, 3 years now almost. But this is my everyday computer, and I want to replace this as well. But I think this is kind of a road to it. What do you think about that, Daniel? Because we're seeing a lot of new devices coming out, Palm phones, etc., and this whole thing about like not just the laptop but the phone. Are you guys thinking about that at all, or is that out of scope right now, even as a thought?
So right now, we don't have anything in the works for any other hardware platforms. The biggest kind of divergence we have right now is we're working a lot on ARM, but I think that will kind of open up the doors there, because if we can get a infrastructure that builds and ships on an ARM platform, then we can start thinking like, okay, what about some more mobile space? Maybe we could do a tablet. It also opens up the doors for other kind of devices, like maybe a home media center, right, or things like that. So, but you're right. Like Laura was saying, it's this ecosystem, right? And you're surrounded by these devices. It's not just your computer; it's all these other things that it interacts with, and to really be able to replace these things in the lives of regular people, we do have to find a complete solution. But luckily, what you were talking about earlier with decentralization, that, we don't have to be a monolithic organization that solves all the problems. We can work with companies like Pine or with Purism. We're regularly working with GNOME Foundation. We're constantly in contact with people at Canonical and Red Hat. And so we can come together as more of a community, or, almost a federation, or, however you want to call it, of organizations that are cooperating and building things that are more compatible across these different platforms. So we all don't have to be $1 trillion companies to compete. We can be, specialists that do our little things here and there.
And I guess that's probably the only way to go about it. I mean, the biggest challenge there, of course, and again, you probably know this better than I do, having done this for quite a while now, is, you know, when you think about, for example, Mac OS, no one uses Mac OS. No one on the planet uses Mac OS. Everyone uses Macs. And I think there's a distinction there. And if we understand that distinction, nobody goes and buys Mac OS or iOS. Right. They use iPhones and they use Macs. And if something doesn't work, their Mac doesn't work. Their iPhone's acting up again, right? Because, and I think, you know, that's not going to change as a mindset. And I don't think we should expect it to change. It just actually does make sense. I pick up a hammer and I'm like, this is a hammer, right? And if it doesn't let me nail something, I'm like, oh, this is a bad hammer. I don't really, as someone who uses a hammer as an everyday thing, I don't really go, okay, well, what's wrong with it? Is it the wood? Is it this? Is it the, you know, connection here, the welding? No, it's just a bad hammer. And I think we need to, it's very hard. It must be very, very hard, especially when you don't have the kind of control of a single organization that controls all these parts, like you work with GNOME. So there's, like, I'm sure, a huge process there. I've only seen, you know, tangents of it. And I've seen issues on the issue tracker that, you know, span years and years. And these conversations are being had, you know, and it might be something like, well, should we change the wording of this from this to that? Or it's not just bike shedding, of course, but there are conversations that range for years. I mean, what is that process like? Because it's someone who works in a very tiny organization, tries to control stuff as much as possible in what we're building, so we can have that control over design. You know, part of it is my nightmare, would be my nightmare to have to deal with, like, all of these various organizations. What is that like? Because you seem to embrace that.
Yeah, you know, it's, I think you really got to pick and choose, like, what things are essential to do in-house, because when you're working on the way somebody interacts with something, like you said, it's a complete product. And there are some things that don't necessarily need to be that way because they're far enough down. So for us, you know, everything that the person who's using elementaryOS sees and touches as far as applications and the desktop environment and, you know, our app store, app center, and all that, like, that's all stuff that we feel is, you know, we need to be able to shape the experience of this. But when we're looking at, like, okay, you know, we need a window management library, like, that's not something that we need to build ourselves. We can collaborate with someone that's been working on one for 10 years and has way more experience with the underlying technology and knows things about,
that's Gala,
you know, hardware acceleration.
Am I right? I'm just looking into it. That's Gala.
Yeah, so Gala is our window manager, and it's built on a technology called Mutter, and that's what GNOME Shell uses. So we're able to really benefit from the expertise in engineering that they've done while shaping a completely different end user experience. Cool.
You know what? I think this kind of segues into what I wanted to do on this show, which was kind of do my second unboxing, because Vimeo destroyed the video of the first one that I did. And it's sad because I had some really nice, genuine reactions. I don't do unboxings or anything, but I was like, this is so beautiful, this box. Daniel, would you be up for this? Kind of like an unboxing / live usability test of elementaryOS on a Star Labs laptop. By yours truly, as you watch. Yeah. Okay.
I was going to say, you better hope he says yes.
I actually haven't got my hands on that particular laptop yet. So I know
you haven't. Okay.
No, Cass had one and he reviewed it, but I haven't got it yet. he's really holding on to it.
Oh, must be you know what? It is gorgeous. So I'm gonna do that unboxing. Just gonna give you my unfiltered thoughts. Yeah. As if I was doing a usability test or taking part in one, I guess. So I'll just I'll put myself full screen for this one just so we can zoom in a little bit. And then we'll get back and have a conversation and invite some people over as well if they want to join us on the conversation around that. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
That's great.
All right, great. So let's kick this off. The second unboxing of the Star Labs laptop. So let me see if I actually have the URL for Star Labs on here. Here, if you want to check them out, it's Star Labs Systems. So you can go over there. So first of all, this cost me half what my previous computer did. My previous computer was a Dell XPS 13 Developer Edition. It was my first Linux computer. And that cost me about 2,000 euros. This cost about 1,000 euros. And it's been 2 years. So there's 2 years difference. So I don't know if that figures into it, but it's good to keep in mind. First thing, this box. Like, I do not know if you can see this, but I'm going to try and hide from the camera, see if it'll focus on it. But there we go. It actually has the contour, the outline of the device itself on it, on every side. Beautiful. You just pick this up and you go, oh, wow, wow. You open it up, because experiences matter. So you open this up, and this is what you see. This gorgeous sleeve. I'm going to drop it now while I'm doing this, I'm sure. But it's gorgeous, gorgeous sleeve. Throw this away. And I think it's hand-stitched, because Laura and I, we're actually just learning how to sew with a machine together. We've got this course we're going through. And I was just looking at the seams, and I'm like, it looks like somebody just made a mistake. And then it's like I think it's hand-stitched. I don't know. But it's beautiful. And my first feeling for it is, oh, this is just so gorgeous. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous laptop. And then, so I'm like, oh, I want to open it. And I can't open it. I'm really trying right now. I'm not pretending. Okay. I can't open this gorgeous laptop is my third thought or so. Because it's very hard to open. Okay, so I'm just going to put it on here. Let's get rid of this as well. You need two hands, and you need to really struggle to open it. Now, again, you open it, though, and you've got this beautiful screen protector kind of code. I had a little error message go up there. I don't know what that is. Okay. So gorgeous thing, you know, for when it's closed. Lovely little details. Now, these things are called delighters. And if you think of design as a hierarchy, if you look at the Ethical Design Manifesto, for example, at the very core of the pyramid, like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the very core, you have the most important stuff. Is it usable? Is it ethical? Does it do what it says? Is it functional? And then if you meet all these needs at the very top, you know, where you would have self-actualization in Maslow's hierarchy, that's where you have delight. If the rest doesn't work, though, the delighters, you know, kind of could almost become insulting. So does it work? So I initially, when I opened it up, it came pre-installed with elementaryOS, which is really awesome. And there was the installer, and I went through the installer, and everything worked perfectly. So you're going to have to take my word for it. So now it's installed, and I want to show you the OS. Now, here's one thing, though, right before I do that. Okay, here's the one issue I have with it. Look at this keyboard and tell me if you notice something. So I'm just going to try and hold this up so it focuses on the keyboard. Apart from my, you know, finger marks, because I have been using it. I'm trying to bring it close over here. Let's see. There we go. Do you notice anything? Let me tell you what the issue is. Here's the Enter key, okay? And then there is another row of keys after the Enter key. So what do I do? From like 30 years of muscle memory on every other keyboard on the planet, where it ends at the Enter key. When I want to press Enter, I press page up and page down. So that's my one huge gripe, right? When you're designing something, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. You see this on elevators sometimes. Elevators have a very set convention for how the buttons are laid out, and it's in relation to the floors. I've seen elevator designs that, you know, someone must have been on LSD when they designed the buttons. It wasn't broken. Why are you fixing it? Apart from that, though, gorgeous, gorgeous, €1,000 computer. So let's plug it in. I'm going to live plug it into the switcher so I can show you the computer. Let's see if I can actually type this in. You are going to see my password if I type it like that. So I'm going to just type it here.
I've just realized that we can do voice of God while you're doing it.
Yeah, are we supposed to be talking right now? I
Yeah,
wasn't sure.
you're both still in the stream, so they can only see me, but you can make any noises you want to there. So let me actually open up the.
Yeah, while you're messing with that,
Yeah.
I noticed when Cass did his unboxing that he had the same issue. It seems like the hinge is a little stiff on there, which is probably, in the long term nice that it won't wear out, but it is one of those things where it would be nice to just be able to tip it open.
But again, let's take it in context, right? Let's remember what we're comparing it to, and also like who's building this. I don't know how many people work at Star Labs, but I asked Star Labs if they could, spare someone to come on the show today. And they said, we are so busy fulfilling orders in the run up to Christmas. We're such a tiny team that we can't. So again, they are, if you go on their website, you'll see there are just a handful of people.
Oh, yeah.
And what they've done is amazing. Now, the reason I don't gloss over certain things is because I care about this, right? You don't see me going on about the issues in macOS right now because honestly, I don't care right now about macOS and making it better, about making the product of a $2 trillion company better or Microsoft's products better. I do care about making these better. So here we are. Okay, now I am going to switch that screen if you can see it. Perfect. Let's make that larger. So when I turned it on, and also let's get rid of Star Labs's thing there. Okay, so when I turned it on, this is kind of what greeted me. It wasn't this exactly, because the difference is you can actually read this. You can read the stuff on the screen. What greeted me on my 13-inch laptop screen, I couldn't actually read, because that is another issue. So that's actually, let me see if I can get over here. Yeah, that's actually another issue. This is a 13-inch screen, and the resolution is 1080, 1920 by 1080. That is the wrong resolution for a 13-inch screen. So at 1x, it is too small. You can't read it. There are settings in Elementary. So if you actually put the text, so I'll show you that. So one thing about Elementary, so you have this lovely menu over here. Let me switch to it. You've got this lovely menu that you press super and space. At least it says super on my keyboard here. And if I look for example, text size, I can see that it's right over there. And I can then set the text smaller or larger, etc. I had to put it on larger to be able to actually read the screen in 1080p, in 1080, sorry, 1920 by 1080 on the 13-inch screen. There's a problem with that as well, because if you then connect to, say, a 4K external monitor, then it's going to be too large, right? So right now, until, and we'll ask Daniel as well about this with the next version of Elementary, whether there's anything that can be done there or is being done about this. I think there might be. I'm in a point, I'm stuck between, okay, every time I switch from like having my laptop with me somewhere to plugging it in, I have to actually also change the text size between those two. So every time I do that, that's kind of, that's a little bit of an annoyance. But the other thing is, I want to show you what I actually saw when I opened it. So I want to show to you in 1x, but I can't, because here's the thing. If I actually go to displays, I actually can't reach, now that this is stuck on 2x on my external monitor when it's connected to its mirroring, I actually can't reach the control to put it back to low DPI. So I'm kind of stuck there. So that's just one thing. Again, let's remember what we're reviewing here, though, right? We're not reviewing something made by a $2 trillion company. We're reviewing something made by a 3-person team with a community of volunteers who have done an amazing job. So here's the bits that I love. A, the ethos, right? But beyond that, so when I was using Pop! OS earlier, which is also a really great distribution by System 76, who also make their own computers. So that's very interesting because they, like Apple, have control over the hardware and the software now. The bit they're lacking is services. If you look at Purism are trying to do all three. Hardware, software, services. That creates the whole experience. So that's very interesting. But a Purism laptop, I can't actually afford right now. I saw one when their CEO showed it to me when he was in Europe. But, I can't really afford one right now to ship it from the US especially. But it's very interesting what they're doing. So I love the ethos of this because unlike Pop! OS, they have very different approaches. Pop! OS is for developers, and they're trying to sell their computers, which is perfectly fine. Elementary actually has an ethos of we want to be a privacy-respecting, beautiful, everyday thing for everyday people. And Daniel can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I feel from having seen their community and what they're working on. And the way they're approaching it, so this is so cool. So this is the App Center. Okay, this is one of the coolest things. The App Center, and I love that they called it an App Center, not a store, but a center. It's not necessarily commercial. One of the coolest things about this is they have curated apps. So they control, they have control over the applications that are supposed to run as meant to be run on elementaryOS. And developers who make these, so let me just take a look at one of them. Is Spice Up? No, Spice Up is free. Let's look at Oliphant. That's free. Some people just make them free. I'm clicking on all free apps now. Let's go to accessories. Let's find one that's not free. Come on, Badger, are you free? You're free.
Go further up, you can see. Yeah.
Akira. All right, excellent. Akira is listed for $15 here. And this is awesome. So today I bought a couple of apps from the App Store. See how ingrained it is from the App Center. All right. So today I bought a couple of apps from the App Center. And it's so cool that you have, Daniel, here, a real chance to foster independent development. And that's not something you can get on Pop! OS. That's not something you can get anywhere else except for Apple on their App Store. And of course the app stores of Google, whatever, and the corporate app stores. But if you want to build indie apps on a platform that's ethical to begin with, that respects privacy to begin with, that is free and open source to begin with, there is no other option for this. And we need this so bad. We need developers who don't want to take part in this toxic mainstream to have a way to make a living. And I think what you're doing here is this is why I'm running Elementary on my new laptop. This is why, even if I have certain issues with certain aspects of it, and I have issues with everything on every operating system, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to try and help. Whether that's a blessing or a curse, you'll see. I don't know, because it can be annoying when someone really cares about design issues to this degree, but I can make a difference, and I can make a difference on this platform by making an app, by porting an app to it. So I think forget everything else. Forget the fact that it is a calm operating system, apart from Alt-Tab, but we can get to that. It's a calm operating system. When you go Alt-Tab, things happen. Man, I don't know if I have other things open here, but let's open Epiphany, which is the browser. When you go Alt-Tab, let me just put this on screen so you get the full experience. Things move around. There are other ways of going around. There are spaces, which are really nice. But I think one of the things that I do miss is not having to think when I switch, especially between my two most used applications, and not having the whole interface jumping up at me and animating, especially on larger screens. But apart from that, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous operating system. But more so, if you're a developer watching this, you can make this better. You could even actually maybe survive and get by and maybe even thrive. I don't know how well people are doing with the apps on there, but There is the potential for that, and that potential does not exist anywhere else. And that alone, for me, means so much, because we need indie apps. We need spaces for people who don't want to contribute to this toxic mainstream to be able to do things. And I don't want to take up all the time, but I want to show you on this new laptop what we're doing with small technology, okay? Because I just installed a few things on there. So let me go back to the screen over here. So, this is kind of what I've started doing. I've started using this myself. So I want to show you what we do. So let me open up Epiphany, my web browser, and I'll take you to Site.js. So I mentioned that we work on trying to create a small web. Site.js is a tool that we've been building, which is sort of a personal web server and a web development platform for the last 2 years or so that makes it very simple to create websites. So you can just get started. To install it, you just copy this installation line over here. So now I'm in terminal. When you first start terminal on elementaryOS, it doesn't look like this. It looks, like this. I'm the one who put the monkey there in my little emoji. So you can, of course, customize things. And I changed it to Z shell because I just like the completion on there. So just because things are a certain way doesn't mean that you can't change it if you want to, of course. But I'm also trying very hard to keep it the way it is, except for my terminal. My terminal is unique. It's not unique. I can tell you what I use. But OK, so Site.js, what can you do with it? You can create a website. So I'm just going to say, let's create a site called Hello World. So I'll go to Hello World, and I'll just say echo Hello World to an index file. It's not valid HTML, but HTML is very forgiving. And if I paste that line to install Site.js. I have it installed, but I'll show you. It downloads it, installs it, and you're fine. And if I say site, then I can go to localhost, and I've got my site there. So right now, it just feels like it's a small web server for what you can do. Now, you can also sync this to other sites. You can do dynamic stuff with it. You can. It has WebSocket support. You can do dynamic stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I do all of these demos. And then even for developers, they'd say, but OK, then how do I deploy it? Well, you need to get a virtual private server somewhere, point a domain name to it, and that's where you've lost people, right? So I just want to show you what we're working on right now, which is just going to go back to the demo here. OK, which is how to do that in 30 seconds. And also, why is that important? It's important because ultimately what we're going to be competing with is you go to Facebook, you sign up in 30 seconds for an account on Facebook.com, right? That they rent to you in exchange for farming you. How do we compete with that? How do we make it 30 seconds for you to get your own place on the web, your own Facebook in the future? 30 seconds, but it's running on your own server. You don't need any technical knowledge for it, etc. You just go to a website and you say, I want this domain. It's yours. It's your own Facebook. And you can talk to everyone else's Facebook. So this is a first proof of concept for that. So let me just show you that. I'm going to say create site, and let's call it elementary. Elementary. Let me not misspell it. Now, I'm just going to press enter. It's creating the server. Server's up and running. It's opened up my browser, and it's saying it's creating elementary.smallweb.org. Now, again, this is just a proof of concept. It doesn't look good or anything. You're not going to do this through the command line. You're going to have a website where you go in and you enter, you choose a name, and this gets set up. So but under 30 seconds, and you can time it, it's going to be about 30 seconds, we can set up your own site running Site.js right now. So it's doing it. It might take taking you there. And boom, elementary.smallweb.org is now live. It doesn't have much there, just a welcome message, but it's live. If you go there right now, you'll be able to see it. We've created a site. That's pretty cool. That's pretty quick. But look at this. if I create elementary.smallweb.org as a folder here, and I go into it, and I say site pull, and I say yes. All right, let's add. I just got the page that's being served there. So if I show you that, that's the welcome message over there. Let's edit it. And here, let's just say elementaryOS rocks. Save it. And I say site push. Yeah, I must have added this earlier, the IP. If I refresh, that's what's on that website right now. Now, this could be a dynamic site. This could be a chat application with WebSocket support. I'm just showing you the most basic thing. But this is kind of where we're at, just as a proof of concept. And that was all done on my little new elementaryOS laptop. So I am going to stop talking now because I have gone on for ages. We're back. Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, super interesting stuff. I'm interesting to see where you go with that.
Well, imagine one day elementaryOS ships, maybe on a laptop, maybe even on a phone at some point, and it comes with your own iCloud. It comes with on your own domain, right? And maybe Elementary gets a portion of that, has set up the infrastructure and gets a monthly fee for that. You can do that using the thing that we're building that when it's ready. So that's kind of like what I'd love to talk to you guys about as well going forward, because that's the missing bit of it. There's the hardware, there's the software, and then there's the services, the data, the sync. That's so important. What if we make it not something that needs a center, you know? And I think this has potential for doing that. It's very early, but it's kind of what we've been leading up to in the last few years.
Services are so hard. And what's interesting is that doing them in a private and secure way is almost at odds with centralization. Like the more decentralized you can make things, then it kind of leans more into them being privately owned by the person that put them there, and lessens kind of the attack surface or the ability for someone to surveil those things, right? The decentralization is kind of seems like the way to go to build privacy respecting services.
By default, yeah. And also, you know, we're seeing so much discussion around right now, like, so should these platforms become better censors, or should they not censor, or are they liable? Are they not liable? Take the platform out of the equation, have every individual own and control their own place, and that problem goes away because we already have a system of justice that deals with people who break the law. So if you're breaking the law on your own instance, on your own website, on your own online presence, then the justice system will deal with you. Facebook doesn't have to do it because Facebook is not even involved, right? We don't even need Facebook is what this whole thing's about, really.
And that way we don't also have to be party to Facebook and Twitter's nonsense policies, like the real name policies and things like that,
which are terribly harmful for certain groups, especially. Since we've got, like, we're coming towards the end discussion bit, we thought it'd be kind of cool to see, I don't know how this is going to work, right? When I did an example of Site.js with doing a chat example on Friday, somebody posted a porn video as one of the first things in the chat. So we don't know how this is going to go with bringing people in from the interwebs, but I think we should try. So if you're watching and you have a webcam, and you have headphones so we don't get feedback, and you want to ask a question, you want to take part in the chat, we have room in the studio for another 7 people even. So come in, use the private chat, and I'm going to just, where are my banners? Oh, there we go. Let me just put the URL there. There we go. Okay. So if you go to that URL and you have your webcam and you have your headphones, join the private chat and tell us what you want to ask, etc. And then we can put you live as part of our conversation at the end of the show, if you want to, of course. But there's the URL. Feel free to join. And I think it'd be kind of cool to get outside questions, etc. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, sounds good.
May I ask a question first?
Of course you may.
Daniel, I'm really interested in accessibility and how we make these things that we're building inclusive, because if we want everyday people to use them, they should be accessible to everybody. So at the moment, if someone was to use elementaryOS, are there any accessibility features you could tell us about?
Yeah, actually, accessibility is something that we've been investing in more and more, because you're right. If we want things to be used by regular people, then regular people are diverse in their ability and their needs. So one of the big products that we've been pushing is this idea of accessibility by default, and that accessibility features are just features and not shove them in a little corner, because we discovered that most people, even if they have some kind of disability, really shy away from that identity, and they'll refuse to use accessibility features if they're pushed in an accessibility corner. And so we've done things like bring text size up to the front and center. And in elementaryOS 6, we're pushing some more features like dyslexia font support. And we have been really focused on delivering a look and feel that is high contrast by default, and trying to move away from kind of the dig around and poke in the corner thing. But of course, there are some features that are more specialized, and so there are things like hover click, that not everybody is going to necessarily want those, but we do have those available, and we've tried to expose more of those settings in their natural location. So when you go to your mouse settings or your cursor settings, that those things are right there first class, and they're not something that it's only in the corner for disabled people, but they're features that are just features for everybody.
Well, and that's the thing, because everybody can make use of a lot of things that would previously been just used for accessibility. I'm thinking of things like voice, like navigation and things like that. That used to be something that we just thought of as being for disability, but actually so many people use voice assistants in all different kinds of contexts nowadays.
Absolutely. Yeah. And keyboard navigation is another huge one. Keyboard navigation is really important for a lot of people with certain kinds of disabilities, but it's also really important for people that are just at their keyboards all the time. Developers love being able to navigate around my keyboard, right? So,
Indeed. Yeah. I see that Adam Proctor's joined. I don't know if Adam wants to join the stream, but I'm going to add him to the stream.
Thanks.
Hi, Adam. How are you?
Hi, Adam.
Hello. I'm fine, thank you. Well, I mainly want to say thanks. It was really interesting and exciting. I'm really great to hear people working on small technology. I did have an accessibility question, actually, that Laura maybe could help with in general. Is so I'm obviously building something, and I've had some conversations about it being accessible from, that being the default position, in terms of color, in terms of interactions, and I really obviously want to try and do that. I'm sort of overcoming technical things at the moment, so it's battling with me in that sense. But I've never found anywhere that's just like the easy to understand, like the go-to starting place where you can have great accessible defaults, in terms of color, in terms of font size. Like, is there anywhere that sort of spells those things out? I know it's very broad, but is there anywhere that just says, start with a 20-point type and have these 3 colors, or not?
I'd say that unfortunately not really. Partly that's because as much as we can go for accessible by default, what's accessible to one person isn't necessarily accessible to everybody, because people do have different needs, diverse needs and requirements. I'd be really interested, Daniel, to know how you've approached that with say things like the color choices and the contrast that you've chosen to use.
Yeah, well, we definitely lean on the web content accessibility guidelines a lot, right? And it does have a lot of those kind of really prescriptive things in there, like you should have this minimum size of type, and they go through a lot dealing with contrast of these kind of elements should have a contrast of this ratio, and these kind of elements maybe not necessarily. And so we've kind of leaned a lot on the work done there. But in our conversations, like you said, things that are accessible to some people aren't necessarily accessible to others. So a high contrast default might actually be really inaccessible for some people. So it's a feature that we've talked about but haven't yet implemented is the ability to scale back that contrast, or maybe people are relying on their devices right now to be able to do that in hardware. But yeah, it's a challenge. Definitely, there's not a place that really lays it out simply, and so it's something that probably we should take on that role more in our documentation to describe to developers how to make their applications more accessible.
Yeah, I get that question a lot from people.
Sorry.
Is finding that one place where things have practical examples, and the thing is, there just isn't. There isn't a kind of one great place like the WCAG, the Web Content Guidelines. They are very detailed, and they're kind of designed to make it easy for people to have absolute reasoning behind it, and to be able to test against it. But it's not really the same thing as finding something that is that perfect, like, usability default. So it would be really great. I think it would be a really great initiative for people that are working on the kinds of things that we're building to maybe work on how do we come up with some of these great defaults? How can we work with people who have different needs to be able to see what works for them and involve people in building these things? Like, maybe we could do that in order to make our efforts more inclusive.
Yeah, I think we might have lost Laura there for a second. But yeah, exactly. And also to remember that, that accessibility is usability for people with varying abilities. So just like with usability, there isn't a guide that says if you do this, it will be usable, because I don't know what you're building. And the specifics of what you're building are very important when it comes to that as well. So I don't know if we can get Laura back, but
I can see her online.
I mean, I am still here. I think it's just Aral that can't see me.
Yeah, now Aral's gone.
No, we're losing Aral. Well, that's okay. I think maybe we can take the opportunity to actually, I've noticed that there was, because I don't have access to allowing people in now, but Isaac had a couple of questions that he wanted to ask Daniel, but doesn't actually want to appear on the stream. So we can ask him this first question. So Daniel, Isaac says, I've been using Elementary since Jupyter came out. That's almost 10 years ago. Where do you see Elementary 10 years from now?
Yeah, 10 years is hard because technology moves so fast, right? Like, who knows, in 10 years, some new platform will come out that completely disrupts our entire idea of what computers are. But for the foreseeable future, what we're really focused on is more of hardware partnerships and our app developer ecosystem. Because, like Aral was talking about earlier with, people, they just use a hammer, right? Like, they want to use these tools to do things. And so that's, part of our big drive for the focus on applications is when people use elementaryOS, they only use the applications menu for half a second, and they're launching applications and they're using the applications. So being a great platform that enables people to build great applications and sustain a living from them is I think, our major focus right now.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was just my trigger finger. Adding Kartik to the chat. Hi, Kartik. You said that you have a question. Hello. You said you have a question about hardware. So go ahead.
So I'm kind of a software supremacist, so I mostly do programming. I'm a professional programmer, but I'm trying to get into hardware, and I'm trying to start playing with a Raspberry Pi or something like that. But what I'd like to do is have a computer that I can plug a Raspberry Pi to and run programs either on the Pi or on my daily driver computer. And I was wondering if y'all are aware of any desktops running ARM processors and whether Elementary runs on ARM. I'm just trying to stitch together a stack that does what I want, that follows the principles you've been talking about.
So this is Elementary running on ARM. Sorry if I'm jutting in here, but let me show you. Let me just show you full screen. So this is elementary running on ARM on a Pinebook Pro, which is a gorgeous computer. That costs about $200 or so, if I'm not mistaken. Very inexpensive ARM-based computer from Pine 64. So the answer to your question is yes, it exists. I'm sure Daniel can probably expand on that, but this is amazing. Amazing.
Awesome.
Like every developer should have one of these. Just like get one, play with it. Seriously, it sounds like the shopping channel, but I'm not in any way affiliated with these things. But literally, a beautiful $200 computer, and with this, you can actually read it when you first open it with elementaryOS because it's got a 14-inch screen. That's at 1920 by 1080, which is better.
That's awesome. So I did research that, and it's been on my radar. Unfortunately, they're having some supply issues, so I can't get one right now.
That sucks.
Yeah.
But also, laptops have, like, by the nature of the form factor, they have to make certain trade-offs. And it occurs to me that we're all stuck at home, and I don't care about portability anymore. And I have RSI, so I use an external keyboard anyway. And I've been wondering if, like, it makes sense for us, the hobbyist community, to, like, start going back and patronizing desktops instead.
So we're actually currently working on support for Raspberry Pi, and so we have an early access program at builds.elementary.io where you can get a experimental builds for Raspberry Pi 4, and we I think just started publishing those like within the last week. So they're still a little rough around the edges, but we are working on that space, and ARM is, I think, definitely going to be an important part of our strategy going forward.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
Well, it's cool. I think we're about a minute over the hour mark. We should probably try and wrap up and not become one of these streams that just goes on forever. I'd like to thank the guests who joined us, Kartik and Adam, for questions. And if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to remove you from the stream if I can manage to do so with this interface that I have. But thank you so much for joining us, and I think that worked pretty well. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
that worked pretty well. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I love this. This is like, so you can't, like, I mean, it's amazing that we can do stuff like this. On Friday when I used the StreamYard service connected to Vimeo with all the studio setup that I have here, which is kind of crazy. I can show it to you if you like. In fact, I'm going to, because it's geeky and nice. Let me try and connect it. So
just overrun on the stream to be geeky.
Running it on the elementaryOS on the laptop. And right now I'm running it on an old MacBook Pro because the Pop OS computer that I have it cuts out the camera every now and then. I don't know why. But on the elementary laptop, on the Star laptop, last week's stream just went perfectly. It was just smooth, gorgeous. So, using it already for everyday stuff. And I can't wait to just, be able to contribute. Even if that's porting a little app that I have for the App Store or App Center. App Center. But yeah, this is the setup. Let me just show it to you. It's crazy. It's this is what I'm looking at right now. It is like screens galore. Wait, let me switch to this. This is how it happens. I don't think I have enough screens, do I?
Incredible.
I mean, wow. Yeah, incredible. Some would say sad, probably. I don't know. But they all have a purpose. And at least that's what I'm telling myself. Yeah. But Daniel, also, it's so lovely having you on this inaugural, live stream. Hopefully we can have, chats maybe on certain topics, etc. in the future. If you have any ideas, let us know. We'd always love to have you back.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Laura, did you have anything you wanted to say as well?
Well, I just wanted to say if anyone else also had any feedback and ideas of things that they wanted to talk about, I think it would be really cool, Daniel, if we could get you on maybe at a later point and see how it's going, like see where things are going with elementaryOS as well. I think that would be really cool to be able to have like periodic catch-ups with you.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. That sounds great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Daniel. I think we're going to wrap it up there. And so, Laura?
It was really nice talking to you, everyone. I've been Laura Kalbach.
And I'm Ural Balkan, and that was the first episode of Small is Beautiful. And that was the first episode of Small is Beautiful. And we'll be doing this every week on Thursdays at the same time. So join us again. Take care.